What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another portrait painting session live here on YouTube. So this will be a long-term format, but probably no more than an hour and a half for the start of a painting. Last time we did a alla prima portrait, so we painted it all in one sitting. Today I'm just going to start one, and I'll work my usual way. I'm not going to change anything up to do any specific demonstration, but I will be talking about some things that people tend to to say that they struggle with. So if you struggle with oil painting, the various aspects of oil painting, this will be a good video for you. Which, by the way, I don't know if you can see what colors I have here. Not that the palette is that clean, but let me put this gray thing behind it. And then maybe, probably not, but maybe you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Um, so what I'm gonna do is I'm adding a tone onto a toned canvas. So I may have done this in the past. I don't remember quite when, but these days I like to work on an active tone. So an active tone is a tone that is active basically with the layer of paint that you're adding onto it. And then, well, inactive would be what this is. It's a dry canvas and you can work on top of it. I like a neutral gray because it makes the lights look like lights, darks look like darks, the warms look like warms, and the cools not so cool. When you're doing portrait, a gray is typically kind of like the best color that you can work with. Just because most skin tones tend to be a sort of orange or pink, some variation of those, no matter what the skin color, no matter what the ethnicity, it's some variation of orange or pink. So now that I've added this tone onto here, hey Beery, for someone who's eventually going to oils, is acrylic good to start my studies? Yeah, you can start with acrylic. You won't have an active tone like this because it'll dry and become a dry tone, which you can't use it in the way that This is basically going to turn into an eraser. But yeah, you can start off with anything you want. I mean, you can start off with acrylic, you could start off with pastel. As long as you're focusing on the right stuff, you can start with anything you want. So I'm going to place the head. But if you were to ask me what's the best move for you, anyone that's uh, anyone that's using acrylic because of the cost efficiency, meaning it's cheaper, or because it's safer for you, I'd say the best thing you can do is to get water mixable oil paint. But that's just my 2 cents. Anything that makes you happy, as long as you're painting and you're enjoying it, is the most important thing. So I'm gonna place the head, and what I'm more focused on is actually the dreads, the dreads that she has. I'm gonna want to paint the hair as detailed as I can. So rather than focusing directly on the face, I'm focusing kind of more with the composition, and that seems to be good for me. This kind of simple placement, and this is why I said an active tone. So I can use this as an eraser, and when I do get into color, I'll have the gray underneath to help me out with any kind of mixtures. So now let's go ahead and start to place some more stuff for the head. The neck is over there, shoulder down there, and this is a 3/4 closer to profile pose. So her nose is going to be very vital to this design. So let me just do something on my computer real quick. I'll pop out the chat so I can see it on a different section of my computer. Okay, all right. So let's talk about the struggles of oil paint. Number one, the toxicity, and and yes, it is more technically more toxic than acrylic if we decide to eat it. Um, which honestly, if you're eating any kind of paint, this is there's something else we probably need to talk about, but um, it's not as dangerous as you would think. Even if you're using lead or using like a mercury red, which is vermilion. Artists have used toxic materials for centuries and have been just fine. There have been some examples of people getting sick, and that's just because of improper handling. Um, thing about it, like keeping a pet cobra. Um, the pet cobra is harmless to you unless you stick your hand in there and wave it around when the cobra is hungry. Otherwise, the cobra is just gonna sit in its enclosure and not really give you any problems. So, but anyway, I'm gonna talk about the struggles that are usually a factor, like paint handling. Right now, I'm able to draw with the paint without having to stress too much about it, and knowing the consistency of medium or solvent to paint is very important. And you just kind of have to get a feel for it, mess around with it, and then eventually you'll find like, oh, I can add a little bit more, I could take out a little bit more. Your materials are also going to be a thing. Like if you're using cheaper materials, it may be a little bit more difficult for you to achieve certain effects like texture and stuff like that, but it's possible. If I sound a little bit off, I've got some allergies going on here. I don't know what's going on with my comment box. It seems to be frozen, or I haven't received any new comments. So, if anyone has any questions or comments or just wants to say hello, this is live at the moment, so feel free to ask any questions. Okay, so I've got this place down pretty much where I want it to be. So profile, um, close to profile, we have a sliver of that eye over there. Okay, so now I'm gonna sketch in some of the darks just using the consistency of the paint, which is another paint handling thing. Let's talk about color real quick. People tend to struggle with color a lot, and one thing I'll tell you is color is the should eventually become the most intuitive aspect of painting. It should in theory, but there's always going to be some thinking involved in it, right? No matter what level. But because it is very subjective in nature, it's a very easy subject to transfer into your subconscious. No matter what the skin tone is, for example, if you're asking if anyone is asking the question to themselves or to others, how do I paint dark skin color? That's an issue right there because it's pretty much the same. Skin color, no matter what the complexity, is pretty much the same. Even though I did choose darker skin tone model, I'm going to show you the mixing and all the concepts are pretty much the same. So from Beery, you wrote, you learned a lot from your acrylic videos, so thanks a lot. Definitely wouldn't be here where I am now. I will learn more about your classes. Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm not totally anti-acrylic. I mean, I've done an acrylic portrait and landscape, I think, before on here, so I'm not totally against it. There's things that you can do with acrylic that you can't do as easily with oil paint. So totally support you there. Thanks for watching the videos. From hey Julie, welcome. Hey hippie artist. Why have I not been streaming as much? I've been like going through different kind of like phases in my life ever since I moved into a different state, and it took me a while to kind of adapt. Not that I'm completely adapted yet. You know, they say it takes about 2 years to get used to where you had like get used to a move. Um, so I just really haven't been in the rhythm of painting very much. I have been teaching, which I do enjoy a lot, on Patreon. That's been pretty much my only art that I've been doing for the past while. I streamed last month, and it was also on a Wednesday. It was a coincidence, really. Um, So that's pretty much the only explanation I can give you. I've just been in different stages of my life with the move, and I do miss painting. I miss the environment, but here in Alexandria, Virginia, there's not really much in terms of painting groups and like not much like motivating aspects of this community for painting other than taking expensive classes with famous artists, which I'm not gonna do. It's too expensive for me. Uh, so Julie wrote, "Why am I painting on canvas?" I like the texture of canvas. This is a canvas panel. Um, I also just have a ton of these available to me. So, convenience basically. If I had a choice, I'd always paint on aluminum, and aluminum is kind of like my newly found favorite material to paint on. Of course, a primed aluminum. Some of you may recall how difficult it is to paint on an unprimed aluminum. Um, but I like canvas. I like all of it, really. The only thing I don't like is a super slick panel. And even then, I don't really mind. I'm not too partial these days. I'm just kind of happy to paint. So for example, today at well about like what, an hour from now, exactly an hour from now, I'll be teaching my portrait class. Um I guess another thing about my life really is it's just been a little different adapting to just new environments and stuff. Started playing practicing pool at a academy, which I've mentioned several times before. But right now, I'm kind of putting that off to the side, um, mainly because it's just starting to kind of drain me a little bit. If anyone here has ever played pool, I actually got into snooker. They got a snooker table there, but nobody wants to play snooker with me. So I'm like the kid in the playground, like nobody wants to play with me. Everybody is too busy playing 8 ball and 9 ball. Meanwhile, I want to play snooker. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of having a little falling out with pool for for at least for now, and I really just miss this like miss painting. Forehead needs to go back a little. So you see, I got two eraser brushes. I've got this big one, and then I have the smaller one. Every painting goes through different stages, right? Um, I'm just a little more cautious checking out this angle here. I'm a little more cautious at the start with this one because I know I'm gonna spend more time with it. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and start to add some color in here. I'm gonna start off with, believe it or not, I'm gonna start off by changing the composition. I'm gonna start off with the background. I'm gonna use the brush that I toned it with. Now I'm gonna use a bluish green for the tone of the background. And I'm gonna use the chiaroscuro. So Beery wrote, "Did you learn acrylic after you learned oil? I'm worried what I'm learning won't help me when I'm trying oil." I learned oil painting first. I never really took a formal acrylic class. Um, Acrylic for me has always been more of um like what people tend to use before they start with oil paint. And I tell you what, it as long as you're focusing on drawing and values at any level that you're at, um, for example, values, I'm going in with a light for the background because I know that I'm going to be painting in darker skin tones. So I'm going to improve upon the photograph. Um, this is called chiaroscuro, and it works both ways. Dark background, light skin tone, light background, dark skin tone. Same concept, really. As long as you're focusing on things like this, I mean, you could do this with acrylic, it would just be dry. Um, you'd have to be adding um, dry paint onto dry paint. As long as you're focusing on drawing value and you're putting the time into it, you'll be just fine. When you're ready to move into oil paint, you'll find how much easier it is than acrylic because the paint it doesn't dry on you right away and you're able to layer onto it. It's more forgiving. Now the chin, I can use the same drawing brush to correct this mistake. I'll move it back up. And you see that would be quite difficult to do with this motion right here. It would be quite difficult to do with acrylic. So another reason anyone is struggling with oil painting has nothing to do with oil painting. There's actually a lot of drawing involved in this. So the drawing itself is a fundamental aspect of representational arts, representational painting, meaning making a thing look like a thing, proper placement of things in relation to one another, and not copying a photograph. Rather, you're interpreting information visually, and at some point, all of this becomes intuitive. You just don't have to think about it. You can start any which way. I could have started drawing Pac-Man in here. It didn't matter. I could start with anything. As long as I eventually work my way into shapes. It's the same thing. Okay. So now, excuse me, I'm going to start to put in some planes. And I would suggest if color for you is something that you struggle with, ask yourself this question. When you're mixing a color, what are you saying to yourself before you mix the color? Okay, so right before I went into the white, I was saying nothing to myself. I just knew that I wanted to have a light and I went straight into the white. When I started to mix the skin color, I wasn't thinking about absolutely anything. It was all subconscious. This might sound weird, but if you struggle with color, stop thinking about it. Just stop. You're not going to all of a sudden start painting a bright purple skin color. you're smarter than that. You're going to intuitively mix color simply by forgetting about it. And sure, you're probably like, well, easy for you to say. You've been painting for longer than I've been alive. And that may be the case. But the way that I learned color was through color study, which involves painting still life out in the sunlight. And when you're painting out in the sunlight, you don't have time to sit there and think about the color mixture. No, you don't. You basically just go right into whatever is in front of you. And that develops an instinct. Color should be instinct. Don't think about it. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Hey, Beery, you wrote, I'm wondering if you have a Discord for little things like critiques. Don't have much help on those except Reddit pages. I have my Patreon. It starts at $5 a month, which allows me to give people feedback on their artwork through something called the virtual classroom, which I upload on Tuesdays, but sometimes, depending on my schedule or how I'm feeling, might be a little bit later in the week. So that's one of the features of my online classes. There's also many other painters out here that do the same kind of stuff. So depending on what you're after and the prices, mine will set you back $5 a month. So it's up to you. No pressure. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you advice totally for free right now. The best thing anyone can do is to paint from the old masters. Do a Rembrandt painting like tonight or right now, tomorrow, as soon as you can. Paint the Rembrandt, as many as you can, and then paint self-portraits. And now I know it sounds weird, but it's totally free. You can do it at your own pace. And that's pretty much what I guide my students through anyway in the beginning. So Matt's Toaster wrote, why, yes, I do struggle with oil paint. How do you know? Because the stuff never comes off my freaking hands. Oh man, I would clap to you. Yes, that's true. It never comes off your hands if you get it off your on your hands. Um, oh, that is so true. Um, yeah, the messiness of oil paint is kind of a thing. So what I tend to do, and it's not always the best thing to do, but what I tend to do is I put this palette in the freezer. It's a small palette. This is an 8x10 canvas, so this is about a, I don't know, 8x12 or something plexiglass palette, and I just put it right in the freezer. Um, Cleaning the brushes is the only time where I actually interact with the paint, but I make sure to thoroughly clean it with mineral spirits before I go into soap and water. But yes, it does get all over your hands. That was a awesome comment. That comment right there made my day. And if you haven't already, please leave a like for this stream. I would love to be able to do more of these streams. And if you watch these streams, if you watch this stream, if you press the like button and all that stuff, I will certainly feel much more inclined to do more of these. So I am at your mercy. If you like these videos, do let me know. Oh, right. Here's another tip for you. If you struggle with oil paint, you may also not be using oil paint. What? What does that mean? A lot of you experienced painters know what I'm about to say. And some of it has to do with using a freezer. So put a lot more paint on your palette than you think you need. Most of this is still wet. Put more paint than you think you need. A lot more paint. And when you're done painting, just put the thing in the freezer and it will keep. I like more of a blue. I'm gonna put more of a blue in here. Maybe a tad bit lighter. Kind of just feel like it. Like I said, color, you don't have to think about it. Try it. Try mixing and not thinking. Sounds weird. Sounds counterproductive. Try to not think about it. Never, ever, ever use the term muddy when it comes to color. There's no such thing as mud in paint. In fact, all of it is mud. It's linseed oil with pigment. Technically, it's colored mud. But there's no such thing. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as an ugly color. There's only a color that is not mixed in relation to the surrounding colors. This is why you need to develop an instinct for color. Another thing is, and I can relate to this big time, is motivation. If you're struggling with motivation for painting, let me tell you something. I used to look on my phone. The popular search on my phone back in 2010, 2011 was John Singer Sargent paintings, Bouguereau paintings, Portrait Society of America. How can I be in Portrait Society of America? Things like that. This was me back when I was just out of high school. And I was so motivated. I didn't need anything extra other than the paint itself, the canvas. There were so many art groups around me. I was I was younger. People were so encouraging to me. I was in the right place at the right time. And things happen in life. I took time off. I went to college, got a math degree, was a math tutor for a little bit. Um, Thought that that was going to be my path. And then I just I didn't want to continue doing it. It just didn't feel natural to me. Um, and then painting happened. Again, I always painted even when I wasn't trying to become a painter. Uh, and then I started the YouTube channel, and it was at around the time that I was still painting with people um, in Maryland, and it just kind of everything flourished from there. And then I moved to Alexandria, and I got really, really into pool, into 9 ball, 8 ball, and all that stuff. Which, if you haven't played these games before, they're kind of addicting. I have a really bad personality where I take something to the limit. If you haven't noticed, um, I start something, and man, that is my oxygen. It's not a good thing. Um, it's a thing. Let's see. Matt's Toaster wrote, "The artist course, I suppose. Glad I made your day." The artist curse, you mean? Let's see. This is the first live I've actually got to catch one of your videos, so appreciate to see you live for once. Oh, good. I'm glad this made your day also. Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you joined the stream. So Beery wrote, "I'm practicing acrylic at the moment. Would I still be able to join your Patreon seeing it's oil?" Yeah, of course. Um, I have an intro to my Patreon, like how to use it on my on the front page. So basically every class is at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Zoom. Every class. And then there's but don't worry about anything else really. It's just 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I have a I'm gonna say the word. I have a plethora of projects, and the way that my classes work is through completion of the projects. So essentially, you could go through all of the projects and not even really interact with me. A lot of people do that. The difference between my online classes on Patreon and my free YouTube videos is that the videos on Patreon are in sequential order to build you up from basically having no experience in painting to having loads of experience in painting. And they're all through, or most of them are through master studies. So paintings from the old masters. So there's a pretty much all of the videos are all organized into playlists, and you just go through the playlists. And of course, the best part is attending the Zoom class because we can talk about it together. I think my wife is watching this. She just texted me what's for dinner. I should be getting dinner ready, but I'm over here painting. Okay, so let's add some more planes. Now, another thing, if you're not struggling with motivation, um, is this weird little part of the painting called the and this is more for portraiture, um, called the awkward stage. So the awkward stage in painting a portrait is once it starts to look like a human, it gets awkward before it gets any better. So it will look a little strange at first because your painting is now resembling a human, but it's obvious that it's not human. So it starts to take on kind of like a um, ghostly image. And you just kind of have to learn how to accept it, understand it, embrace it, and then forget about it. Um, you just know that it's always going to be there, and you just ignore it, and you focus on the fundamentals, planes, light and shadow. Most of this stuff will eventually become intuitive. You don't need to think about it. How long does it take to get there? Depends on you. How much time you're able to practice, how much time you're able to develop your sense of color, your sense of value, your sense of composition, doing the right stuff early on rather than doing the wrong stuff will accelerate the amount of time it will take you to reach a high level in anything. This is true for anything. You can get to a high level with the wrong fundamentals in anything. It'll just take a longer time. Do you want to spend a longer time, or do you want to learn at a faster rate? It's totally up to you. Now for the dreads, I'm just gonna kind of guesstimate where some of them are gonna go. And they're not really dreads, I think it's just braided. I should know, I have long hair. And I like, braid it once in a while. Yeah, kind of like the Uncanny Valley. Yeah, exactly, Matt. Hey, Shuvo Arts, welcome, welcome. Thanks for watching. So again, values, right? That value is way too light. But again, with this is the difference with oil paint versus acrylic paint. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. Acrylic, that would have dried or been close to drying. So now you have to remix the color that you want to put on top of that, or use the transparency of the paint. Um, in oil paint, I don't have to do that. I can just go into it directly and modify it from there. It's easier. It's not impossible to do this with acrylic, it's just harder. So Matt's toaster, let's see, you wrote, I want to see 1v1 head to artist battles. Me versus Renzo. And all out oil painting, swinging death match minus the death. That's funny. I mean, Renzo is more experienced than me, I think. I would suppose. From what I have a lot of students that are also students of his. So from my knowledge, he has much more years of experience painting than I do. Um, so I'd probably have to concede that battle. I can only show you what I can do, explain what I can do. Um, I'm sure he has a lot more knowledge, which is a good thing. It's good to have a variety of different creators out there. Remember, everyone, I kind of sound older than I am, I guess, to most people, but I am 33. I've been painting uh, most of my life, but I only started taking uh, like uh, let's just call it hardcore painting classes, like learning how to do grisaille, gesture drawing, figure drawing, anatomy, perspective, all those things, uh, just out of high school. So that's when I really got into it. So when you look at it, I've got about 14, probably almost 15 years of experience. This canvas, by the way, all of these gray canvases, neutral gray toned canvases, are toned with This right here, lead oil ground. So I mix this with a little bit of black oil paint, and I paint over a bunch of old paintings that I know I'm not gonna do anything with, like this. I paint over them, let them dry for about a month or two, and it creates a really nice surface. I wouldn't suggest the oil primer if you are at all concerned about accidentally getting paint on your hands. Even if you get lead paint on your hands, you're not going to accidentally ingest it. Um, it's not a, it's not like one of those worst case scenarios. Just clean your hands and that's it. We probably ingest more lead from certain foods than we do from paint. Can't tell you what foods. I don't know, but sure it's possible. So Matt wrote, both of you guys speak so fondly of each other, so the more I want the better. You're funny. Thanks. You're funny. It's like Earl Strickland versus Efren Reyes. Um, Not that I compare myself to Earl or Efren. Um, Anyone that knows about pool. I'm gonna be meeting Efren next month. Actually, he's coming to the academy. Here's another question, or not really a question. It's more of a observation, and the different one of the major differences between oil painting or art, I guess, representational art versus every other kind of art, is that there isn't a very good level of measure for what is high level, low level, mid level. There really isn't a, and it's probably for the best. We artists tend to be very sensitive people, but there really isn't a measure of what is good, what is bad, and we tend to think that the photograph is the ultimate. The photograph is the tell all. Does the painting confuse people with a photograph? And and when I was young, early on, I thought that was the case until I was introduced to representational art, like my teachers, uh, John DeMartin, Paul Hamilton, Robin Fry, Nelson Shanks students that taught me. And I realized there's so much more than merely looking like a photograph. But yet there's a whole nother level. I mean, there's so many different gauges, really. So picking a way to objectively say what is and what isn't high level painting is one of those things really that cannot be um, cannot be understood without a lot of people collaborating together trying to figure out what it is, more than just Portrait Society of America or whatever competitions, because those aren't really a good measure of how well people paint. It's pretty much a measure of what can you um, make more popular to the media. So Matt wrote, make my own lead oil ground and lead white. Ever consider mulling your own paint? I've tried. I have, and maybe you can tell me why this happens. So I let me show you. I have like Gamblin. Is it Gamblin? Yeah, Gamblin pigment, and I mull it with like glass. Like so, I have this, and I have a sheet of glass, and I don't really have a molar. I just use my palette knife because this is what I've seen other people do, and just go over and over and over and over um, with linseed oil, and it looks just like regular oil paint. And then all of a sudden, like the next day or in 2 days, it starts to get liquidy, and not like Rublev, where Rublev separation happens and it's like more of a dry paste, but it just becomes like overly liquidy. I don't know why it is. So Matt, if you know why that is, let me know. If somebody watching this in the future knows why that is, let me know in the comments. I really don't know the answer to why when I mix it, it seems fine, and I do put quite a lot of pressure with my palette knife over time, and it at least from what I've seen other people do the same thing. Their paint doesn't do that. I don't know if it's maybe the Gamblin um, pigment. I'm not sure. Oh, good. You know why it ends up running. Yes. Tell me. I need to know. I don't know. Hey Diane, you wrote, most houses were lead paint when I was a kid. I never knew that anyone affected by it. Usually not unless people are scraping. It usually happens to construction workers that are scraping paint off the walls. That's usually where most of uh, the harm happens. So Matt wrote, when mauling the sheet glass underneath it tends to be scratched up. Some people use glass or sandpaper of high grit. The sheet glass underneath it needs to be scratched up. Some people use glass or sandpaper with grit. Let's see. The palette knife is not a great way to bind the pigment to the oil. So I guess I do need to buy a molar. That would make sense. This is why it's not a good idea to try to shortcut things. So it's mainly because of the lack of grit of the glass and the palette knife being not being a good way to bind the pigment. Okay. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yep, I shall invest in a proper molding paint molding kit. Because I have way too much pigment to end up having to spend more money buying a tubed color. It's pretty much almost time to buy some new brushes too. I tell you all, do the best that you can to clean your brushes properly, especially if you buy these more expensive ones, the Silverbrush Grand Prix. I've been using dish soap, which is not good. I suggest using something called the Masters soap. It's called the Masters soap, and it's not too expensive. You can get it on Amazon. Um, I might even have a link to it in my description. Which, by the way, I've got a couple Amazon links in the description for materials that I use, including the brushes and the colors. And one of the most important things that I fail to mention frequently, your light. I have an LED light up here that's almost head on going this way. So almost about like 90 degrees, if not 90 degrees going down this way, which makes for a lot of a lot less glare, and I can see the true colors of the paints, kind of like the song. You can see your true colors. Let's see. So Matt, you're probably are adding too much oil in general, however, but you have to work at it for a good while. When making my toxic pigments, use an air box that uses portholes, sticky arms. Hmm. So you were saying about how the paint gets on your hands, and now we're talking about lead materials. So I definitely wouldn't want to get the lead stuff in the air. Yeah, you definitely have way more knowledge about that than I do. Um, because as you saw, I only have titanium white. I don't have lead white. But for example, like yellow ochre, it's basically just iron oxide or whatever. My umbers, yeah, I'm definitely going to uh, buy a muller to prepare them. So Matt, you wrote, I like my lead white ropey like Rublev, thick paste like Michael Harding. That's pretty cool that you can make it like that. This is ropey also, but um, it just ended up being that way. But it's not like the one that you make, of course. But I know what you mean. That's a really big thing about paint when you enjoy the consistency of it. It's like shooting with a good pool cue. Like it's not gonna necessarily shoot straighter or anything like that, but man, is it gonna feel better? The feel has a lot to it. So another thing about things that we may struggle with oil paint, and this is also true for acrylics, and is to have a light brush, a dark brush, Well, in acrylic, I guess it won't matter as much because you clean the brushes very frequently. But um, for example, like I have a light brush and a dark brush, a light brush, a middle brush, and a dark brush. This is the light brush. This is the middle brush. This is the dark brush. So it's good to have an organization. Hey, Matt. Yeah, I will take it at my own pace. Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna mix up any of the lead just yet. So far it's been just under an hour. So quite some progress here in under an hour. Most of this is due to the fact that I was drawing with planes and color. Now when I start my students off, I have them do more detailed drawings. By detailed, I mean more accurate drawing. And then gradually progressing to monochrome painting. And then eventually uh, color study, and then full color painting. But all of the beginner projects start out with a very controlled drawing, limited palette for skin colors, especially for something like Rembrandt. Yeah, and I've got some students that have started with me from pretty much nothing. Now they are like doing portrait commissions. Um, they've got more clients than I do, and it is possible to achieve a high level in a short amount of time with painting. It's not like a sport where you're going to be devastated when you miss the last ball or something and your entire team was counting on you, and you have to do thousands and thousands of hours of repetition of a particular body movement. Just you hold the paintbrush pretty much the same way, you keep yourself to the same distance, and all this stuff really can happen faster than you think. That's funny. Matt wrote, "Call it finished, label it your loosely painting phase." Well, I like starting this way, and I know that you're only joking. I like to start this way, but eventually I do build up more detail, more structure. It doesn't always look better when I add more stuff to it, but I do like to add more. But who knows? Maybe next time I'll feel like painting something else, different model, maybe a landscape or a seascape. Who knows? And believe it or not, I mean, to me, this painting is no more than like the bare minimum of what I would consider like the start of a painting. For me, this is like adding 5 lines to a canvas worth of finish. But if I could sell it, then I mean, I'll sell it right away. anybody wants to do like whatever they want to buy it for like $100 or something, you can just take it. So you wrote, let's see, is that what you want from your paintings, commissions, or you're more into teaching part of it? I'm more into like this part of it, like the streaming part of it. A lot of people may not know this about me, but I kind of prefer to paint with a camera on. I don't really like to paint by myself. Even if I'm listening to music and it's like really quiet and uh, in the room and peaceful and stuff, I'm not that kind of person. Like I like when there's a little bit of um, I don't know, like pressure involved in it. Because like when I came up painting, I mean, I was always painting in groups, art groups. I never really had the ability to have a model to myself. So this is all I've ever known, and I just want to do this. I don't really care to do commissions. I'm not that great of a people person, so I'm not known to be the best person to have a commission painting. I'm just too independent, which is not always a good thing. But this is what I want. This to just paint here, stream, talk to you, talk to everyone. This is my ultimate. This is my dream in life as a painter. You know, I have other aspirations as a dog trainer, as a pool player. I have other aspirations to achieve high levels in other things, but for painting, this is my ultimate. All right, so I got about 10 minutes till I got to teach my portrait class. And that's on my Patreon on Zoom. The Zoom link is the same every week. But again, I've got a video explaining all that stuff of how my Patreon works. So I'll be teaching portraits in about 10 minutes on my Patreon. But fear not, I will return to YouTube again. Maybe even sooner than you think. I mean, last time I returned, I hadn't streamed for more than a month. This time it's only been like a month. And you can't leave without putting in that earring. All right, so that's the point where I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. So Matt, you wrote interactions are always a good thing, especially in art. Yeah, totally. I mean that's just my personality. I mean that's one of the things that drives me to that pool academy a lot is that like there's people there that are basically interacting with you, encouraging you, telling you things that you could do differently. There's people there that I'm able to help, like teach them how to shoot straight, like their fundamentals. Um, that's fun for me to interact with people. The competition aspect of it's fun, but it's just I wish something like that existed here with painting. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we got something here from JM. Currently painting a portrait and oil paint completely messed up. I was trying to use a dry brush to blend the wet paint and I managed to ruin a perfect eye. I learned just to be patient. That can happen, yeah. So you wrote dry brush to blend wet paint. That can happen. One of the nice things is if you're working on a dry painting, if you're painting wet into dry, that won't happen as much because you'll be able to subtract back to the previous layer. So I totally understand what you're saying. Like this way to start a painting is the easiest way to make a huge mistake. Because this is still wet. Anything like if, just like you said, if I go into it with a dry brush, I'm gonna end up ghosting something out. But fear not, you can always use the ghost or whatever is left behind. And if anything, that's a good thing because you end up taking out details. And painting with less detail is actually more realistic than painting with more un than painting with more detail is what I'm saying. So either way, it's okay. It happens to us all. Yep, just like Matt said there. I really gotta clean the backside of this palette. All right, I'll leave you all with this. A quote from the great, the late Brian Barczyk. Be kind to someone, and I promise I'll see you. He says tomorrow, I think, but I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow, but I'll see you next time. As Brian Barczyk would say, be kind to someone. So once again, yeah, be kind to someone. I wish you all the very best, and I shall see you on the next one.